just a kid and my life is a nightmare. I'm just a kid and my life is unfair. Hello. Today, we're gonna be doing a short chapter. Um, this chapter's short. Feminist thinking in the classroom right now. It's like 6 pages. It's like 7 pages. Very short chapter. It says feminist thinking in the classroom right now, so I'm just gonna assume that this is gonna be like, 50-50, like me reading and then me explaining how things have changed. Hopefully though, this won't take too long. That's the lucky thing today, is this might not take too long because um of how far behind America is on education reform. Um so hopefully I'll have time to do some maintenance tasks and schoolwork today. We're on chapter 8. We're getting through this. There are 14 chapters in the book. Chapter 8's here. Book ends on page 208, which means we've just about to hit the halfway mark here. I want to say I've made peace with the concessions made in this book regarding the publishing, the process of publishing this, the limitations of the medium, and the academic coding and dialectics at the time, right? I want to say that I've done a lot to penetrate these things in previous videos. So I'm going to move forward just for the sake of technical limitations in regards to large file sizes and YouTube uploads. For the sake of that, to make sure my computer doesn't crash every 5 minutes that I try to edit this into a long cut, I'm gonna be moving a little faster. I've said my piece on what it is that there is, and I'm hoping that now it will be much more clear what we can glean from this book in terms of its value and in terms of what we can learn from it about learning and about teaching, right? But this is a book that's much more about the student than the teacher. I'm thinking, okay, so this is in the classroom right now. This is a short chapter, okay? Feminist scholarship is next. I think after this chapter, don't take this as like a sure thing, but I might be pivoting fun reading time to work by Paulo Freire, just to clarify some of the deeper notions embedded in this book, that we might find in future chapters. We've gone over a lot, so there should be more time to talk, right? So we can begin going over this other work to enhance our understanding of this work, right? So this is, I want to just make it clear right now. I'm starting chapter 8 on fun reading time, number 18, okay? But I might be starting chapter 9 on a different number. Maybe I'll be able to gleam over all of this, or gloss over all of this when I go to edit. But for now, that's what it is. So, chapter 8, feminist thinking in the classroom right now. Teaching women's studies classes for more than 10 years, I've seen exciting changes. Right now, teachers and students face new challenges in the feminist classroom. Our students are no longer necessarily already committed to eye tracker. Hold I like this clown thing. Okay, we have a heat map visuals online. All right. Teaching women's studies classes for more than 10 years, I've seen exciting changes. Right now, teachers and students face new challenges in the feminist classroom. Our students are no longer necessarily already committed to or interested in feminist politics, which means we are not just sharing the good news with the converted. They are no longer predominantly white or female. They are no longer citizens of the United States. When I was a young graduate student teaching feminist courses, I taught them in Black studies. At that time, women's studies programs were not ready to accept a focus on race and gender. Any curriculum focusing specifically on Black women was seen as suspect, and no one was yet using the catch-all phrase women of color. In those days, the students in my feminist classrooms were almost all Black. They were fundamentally skeptical. About the importance of feminist thinking or feminist movement to any discussion of race and racism, to any analysis of Black experience and Black liberation or struggle. Over time, that skepticism has deepened. Black students, female and male, continually interrogate the issue. Whether in the classroom or while giving a public lecture, I am continually asked whether or not Black concern with the struggle to end racism precludes involvement with feminist movement. Don't you think Black women as a race are more oppressed than women? Isn't the women's movement really for white women? Or haven't Black women always been liberated? Tend to be the norm. Striving to answer questions like these has led to shifts in my ways of thinking and writing. As a feminist teacher, theorist, and activist, I'm deeply committed to Black liberation struggle and want to play a major role in re-articulating the theoretical politics of this movement so that the issue of gender will be addressed and feminist struggle to end sexism will be considered a necessary component of our revolutionary agenda. This is in summary a application of the vulnerability and sort of loss of authority that she describes earlier in the book. Here we see students in the classroom interrogating the material according to dimensions that affect their ability to internalize this material. They're not asking these things because they necessarily believe in them, but it's enough that the thought exists with no response to create a disjunction in their mind when it comes to the continuity of the material. If you want to have, this decompartmentalized view of things, you have to be able to address things. And Bell Hooks says, well, I just changed it up a little bit, because that's fine. These are relevant questions to the subject matter. Even if they seem to be more about race than the matter at hand, or more about these general ideas that lead to entering the classroom than more about these general ideas that lead to entering the classroom than is apparent in the. Sorry, I'm like. You know how it is when I get assaulted. You saw my eyes flip out. All right. Now my shoulders are getting really stiff. Ridiculousness. All right. She's answering these questions that have more to do with reasons to enter the classroom in the first place to a lot of teachers, rather than the material at hand. So rather than say that they're derailing or regressing, she addresses these questions so that these students can learn the material. And she justifies it, right? Commitment to feminist politics and black liberation struggle means that I must be able to confront issues of race and gender in a black context, providing meaningful answers to problematic questions as well as appropriate, accessible ways to communicate them. The feminist classroom and lecture hall that I am speaking in most often today is rarely all black. Though the politically progressive clamors for diversity, there is little realistic understanding of the ways feminist scholars must change ways of seeing, talking, and thinking if we are to speak to the various audiences, the different subjects who may be present in one location. How many feminist scholars can respond effectively when faced with a racially and ethnically diverse audience who may not share similar class backgrounds, language, levels of understanding, communication skills, and concerns? As a black woman professor in the feminist classroom, teaching women's studies classes, these issues surface daily for me. My joint appointment in English, African American studies, and women's studies, as well as other disciplines, usually means that I teach courses from a feminist standpoint. But that are means that I teach courses from a feminist standpoint, but that are not listed specifically as women's studies courses. Students may take a course on black women writers without expecting that material will be approached from a feminist perspective. This is why I make a distinction between the feminist classroom and a women's studies classroom. In a feminist classroom, especially a women's studies course, the black student who has no previous background in feminist studies usually finds that he or she is in a class that is predominantly white, often attended by a majority of outspoken young white radical feminists, many of whom link this politic many of whom link this politic to issues of gay rights. That's changed a bit. Now people want like vindication for like sexual violence, and they want like the the rich kids around here want the rich white women around here who mobilize more often than not want to be like this standing police force that enters movements and tries to seize the beast from leadership. That's like the most oppositional example, I think. I think most feminists around here are just normal people who just kind of go through their life and socialize and all that. But if we're talking about like adversarial people, like that's more like that. It's more like that. And it's I would say that gay rights are an issue that we discussed at length in, I don't know, like 2005, 2006. And really started becoming became ratified, fully ratified, I want to say like around 2010. This is just like me guessing. If I'm wrong, something will come up on the screen now. And I want to say that like socially gay people in media were well represented by like around, I want to say well represented to mean like often represented, not like necessarily accurately represented, but like often represented and almost neutrally represented. Media always has like a bias towards its own consumer culture, but mostly neutrally represented by around, I think it's safe to say 2018. So that's changed a lot. I think that's changed a lot. I think people take gay rights for granted now. They're not really being challenged in the courts like they used to be here in California. So gay rights have kind of entered the category of like human rights. in terms of like the fight for gay liberation. Roe v. Wade got overturned though, so that's new. Uh, Unfamiliarity with the issues may lead black students to feel at a disadvantage both academically and culturally. They may not be accustomed to public discussions of sexual practice. That's changed a lot. If a black student acknowledges that she is not familiar with the work of Audre Lorde, and the rest of the class gasps as though this is unthinkable and reprehensible, that's that gasp evokes the sense that feminism is really a private cult whose members are usually white. Feminism is much more public these days. The star commodity is no longer like a person. So this reaction is not as common as it has been in the past, because I think people saw this criticism and really internalized it. So the star commodity is an ideology nowadays, and it's not like it wasn't before, but I mean it to say that it's like the lexical content of an ideology that is the star commodity. Because identity politics are so much more actionable. And we live in this social media era where we're constantly sent these massive strings of text to mobile devices that we have on us to perform necessary societal functions daily. And so the commodification of these ideological statements is much more prevalent. So that kind of reaction would be more often elicited when someone expresses, say, an opinion that is maybe only tangentially, or like, how would I put this? Like, related by virtue of one of these of star people, right? Because it'll be like saying that you like a show, or like that you like a game, or that you like an album or something like that. The content of the album itself, or the game or the show, can be deeply symbolic and largely up to artistic interpretation. But because of the commodification of this massive amount of text and its ubiquitous availability using these mobile devices, the homogeneity of human experience has begun to include these commodities that are mostly lexical. So people would have like this kind of reaction to that. What the sense that feminism is really a private cult whose members are usually white exists, but it's much more difficult to make a statement like that, because feminism isn't this like niche thing. Feminism is a part of one's personalized experience interacting with social media using one of these computing devices, which is to say that it's more diverse, nuanced, and niche, but represents the same lexical content. I would argue that we are in the midst of a nomic crisis as a result, but that is a discussion that we should have later. Probably when I do Roger Griffin on here. Such black students may feel estranged and alienated in the class. Furthermore, their skepticism about the relevance of feminism may be regarded contemptuously by fellow students. Their relentless efforts to link all discussions of gender with race may be seen by white students as deflecting attention away from feminist concerns and thus contested. Wow, that hurts, dude. That's like something coming directly from like a division of labor. That's like a like something that people like insist is about like specialization. You're saying that like feminism and feminist movements have no place for someone whose role is to contextualize feminism in regards to race. That's so racist. Sheesh. That's really that's like segregationalist. That's like really trying to exclude these people based on prejudice alone. Um and it still happens today during this nomic crisis. Um and yes, neo-Nazism is as popular as it's ever been. As socially acceptable as it's ever been, I should add. Um Globally. Let's see. Suddenly, the feminist classroom is no longer a safe haven, the way many women's studies students imagine it will be, but it is instead a site of conflict, tensions, and sometimes ongoing hostility. Confronting one another across differences means that we must change ideas about how we learn. Rather than fearing conflict, we have to find ways to use it as a catalyst for new thinking, for growth. Black students often bring this positive sense of challenge, of rigorous inquiry to feminist studies. I love that. I do that. Um, it's become way less popular. I think this sort of positive note that uh Bell Hooks is ending on here has been largely negated uh by means of this ubiquitous computing apparatus that commodifies lexical content, because lexical content um basically a majority of the time has some sort of emotional connotation. And so anger has been um anger and contempt are viewed as like these socially unacceptable things right now. That's like a huge thing in the youth movements. Anger and contempt are negative attributes. Um Largely spawned from mythological conceptions of older generations and their attachment to exciting media, uh, which is kind of tied into a discussion of like totalitarianism and ownerships of the means of violence, um, which is kind of out of the scope of this book, but just to say. And so their sort of mythological ideas surrounding like negativity are largely informed by like gaming content, where uh, gaming content or like reality TV show content where young men their storyline or their like problem seems to be that they're very negatively emotional, and that their life would be turned around if they started to internalize what was around them uh without a critical lens. Which is good and bad, obviously, because you do want people to be able to internalize what's around them at times without a critical lens. That's literally what the book advocates for. But it's dominated by this consumer culture that begs of people to engage in social functions that are mostly politically impotent and detach themselves largely from academia and academic learning. Um, so negativity, which is sort of this is sort of antithetical to learning, now has this uh, connection between how people approach school in theory and how people approach these social situations. So if someone comes in to like a comment section, they come in to comment on one of these pieces of content online, or even in a regular social situation, expresses negativity about sexual content, or anything that has to do with like mainstream culture and its commodification of life. Um, these people, their social cue is to um, connect that negativity with the negation of learning that they view as a very negative thing in these like reality TV show um scenarios. And so people will actively rebut these negative opinions using um exclusionary negative enforcement. So all the social media controls, every piece of social media online has like these negative juridical controls where um, people can get removed from the platform. Content removal and removing the privilege to interact between users is almost exclusively the way that social media allows people to have like interpersonal interactions. And so people have internalized this. Younger generations, especially, have internalized this as the appropriate reaction when met with this negativity. And so there's more fragmentation in society that is directly pointed towards this emotionally informed moment where people are rebutting something. So, because the velocity of text and the velocity of content and the velocity of commodities coming from mainstream sources that usually attempt to create these politically impotent groupings is so much higher than any sort of grassroots movement or any sort of attempt to criticize these mainstream movements. Um, I would say that this idea that black students can bring a positive sense of challenge is being negated in black communities. Um, because of like how people can personalize their content on here. Essentially, someone on the other side of the internet who pays millions of dollars to have privileged access to these uh, social medias that deliver people all of this text target black people with this sort of emotional like learning negation process that I've described here. And this is being erased. This is being erased through social media and social media content in younger generations. So we're seeing less criticism, but an increased velocity of delivery of politically impotent content and like these politically impotent groupings. So we're seeing more social dysfunction, societal dysfunction, more social separation and fragmentation, and as a result, more frustrated individuals committing acts of violence. Um, it's like it's like a surveillance state has been erected, and so the idea that someone can just like hire a hitman to kill someone is like now like a faux pas. And so these rich people have created a new means of targeting individuals to create assassination attempts. And in this past administration, we've already seen like two or three attempts on the president's life, and several successful assassinations of like CEOs and public speakers who exist in this social media realm. Me personally, I've experienced a lot of violence from my younger brother, who is about 6 years younger than me, based on this sort of negation of like learning process. Because I was a gamer growing up, and I was beat by my mother, and so I expressed a lot of rage. And social media and entertainment at the time encouraged me to let out my rage. Um, he sees that as like a very negative thing, and so yeah, he's like broken my finger. He's like lied to my parents about like things that I've done. Um, my parents reacted very negatively, and right now I don't have a job, and I don't have any of my previous friends because of friction within the home and friction outside of the home. Um, due to this orchestration of like conflicts in my personal life. So things have changed a little bit, and we're seeing a lot less of this, which I think is a bad thing. and I hope you understand why. Tried my best to name what I was saying. Teachers, many of whom are white, who find it difficult to address diverse responses, may be as threatened by the perspectives of black students as their classmates. Hold on. Unfortunately, black students often leave such classes thinking they have acquired concrete confirmation that feminism does not address issues from a standpoint that includes race or addresses black experience in a meaningful way. This is still true. Let's say uh it's true. Let's just say, yeah, I think this entire statement's still true. And it extends way beyond the classroom. I think bell hooks would agree that at the time it extends way beyond the classroom, but now it exists in this addictive digital realm. Because the touchscreens themselves are addictive. Doing this to get more content taps into neurology in the human brain related to food gathering, and that's according to Dr. Anna Lemke, MD, in her book Dopamine Nation. And there have actually been several lawsuits hedged against social media companies as a result in the past few years. Go after the phone manufacturers. The phone manufacturers are key to this, okay? Go after the touchscreens, okay? That is the way to go about this. Black women teachers committed to feminist politics may welcome the presence of a diverse student body in classrooms, even as we recognize that it is difficult to teach women's studies to black students who approach the subject with grave doubt about its relevance. In recent years, I've been teaching larger numbers of black male students, many of whom are not aware of the ways sexism informs how they speak and interact in a group setting. They face challenges to behavioral patterns they may have never before thought important to question. Towards the end of one semester, Mark, a black male student in my reading fiction English class, shared that while we focused on African American literature, his deepest sense of awakening came from learning about gender, about feminist standpoints. Sounds like my community college experience. When I teach courses such as Black women writers or third world literature, I usually have more black students than those courses that are specifically designated as women's studies. I taught one women's studies senior seminar for a professor who was on leave. Too late, I realized that this course was really for women's studies majors, and as a consequence, would probably be all white. Described as a course that would approach feminist theory from a standpoint that included discussions of race, gender, class, and sexual practice, the first class attracted more black students than any other women's studies course I have taught. Talking individually with black students interested in the course, I found that the majority had little or no background in feminist studies. Only 2 students, one male and one female, were prepared to take the class. My suggestion to the other students was that they look at the assigned materials to see if they were interested in it, if it was accessible. They decided for themselves that they were not prepared for the seminar and eagerly proposed another option, which was that I allow them to explore feminist theory, particularly work by black women, in a private reading course with 10 black female students. When we first met, the students expressed the sense that they were transgressing boundaries by choosing to explore feminist issues. This is amazing, by the way. One sec. Normally I'd disrobe, just like kind of wear the towel, but I don't think it's very tasteful. It's kind of a private thing. Man, I'm sweating. All right. I gotta hot. Friggin' hot today, man. Very much a militant advocate of feminist politics before taking the course, Lori, one of the few students who had a women's studies background, told the group that it was difficult to share with other black students, particularly male peers, her interest in feminism. I see how it is when I talk to one individual black man who does not want to have anything to do with feminism, and then lets me know that nobody wants to hear it. Challenging them to explore what makes the risk worth taking, I heard various responses. Okay, she's doing it for the whole class. This same kind of accommodation for a larger class. Let's see where this goes. I heard varied responses. Several, as per usual, right? Several students talked about witnessing male abuse of women in families and communities and seeing the struggle to end sexism as the only organized way to make changes. Melinda, who is Afrocentric in her thinking and plans to spend a year in Zimbabwe, told the group that she considers it misguided for black women to act as though we have the luxury to take feminism or leave it, especially if it rejects peers, because peers respond especially if it is holy smokes. Can I speak? Especially if it is rejected because peers respond negatively. I don't think we really have that choice. That's like saying I don't want to have race consciousness because the rest of society doesn't want you to. I mean, let's get real. Throughout the semester, there was more laughter in our discussions, as well as more concern about negative fallout exploring feminist concerns than in any feminist course I have taught. There was also ongoing attempts to relate material to the concrete realities they face as young black women. All the students were heterosexual and particularly concerned about the possibility that choosing to support feminist politics would alter their relationships with black men. They were concerned about ways feminism might change how they relate to fathers, lovers, friends. Most everyone agreed that the men they knew who were grappling with feminist issues were either gay or involved with women who were pushing them. Brett, a close partner of one of the women, was taking another class with me. Sorry, my throat's tightening up. Since he was named a black woman, most everyone agreed that the men they knew who were grappling with feminist issues were either gay or involved with women who were pushing them. Brett, a close partner of one of the women, was taking another class with me. Since he was named by black women in the group as one of the black males who was concerned about gender issues, I talked with him specifically about feminism. He responded by calling attention to the reason it is difficult, but for the reasons it is difficult for black men to deal with sexism. The primary one being that they are accustomed to thinking of themselves in terms of racism, being exploited and oppressed. Speaking of his efforts to develop feminist awareness, he stressed limitations. I tried to understand, but then I'm a man. Sometimes I don't understand, and it hurts, because I think I'm the epitome of everything that's oppressed. Since it is difficult for many men to give voice to the ways they are hurt and wounded by racism, it is also understandable that it is difficult for them to own up to sexism, to be accountable. More and more, individual black men, individually, are particularly young black men, are facing the challenge of daring to critique gender, be informed, and willingly resist and oppose sexism. On college campuses, black male students are increasingly compelled by black female peers to think about sexism. Recently, I gave a talk where Pat, a young black man, was wearing a button that read, "Sexism is a male disease. Let's resolve it ourselves." Pat was into rap, and he gave me a tape of rap that opposed rape. During our last private reading session, I asked black women students whether they felt empowered by the material, if they had grown in their feminist consciousness, if they were more aware. Several commented that the material suggested to them that black women active in feminist movement have more enemies than other groups. Several commented that the material suggested to them that black women active in feminist movement have more enemies than other groups and were more frequently attacked. In their own lives, they felt it was difficult to speak out and share feminist thinking. That's racism is compartmentalization. And you know it because it's apparent here. Like look at this. They're saying feminist literature is making me believe that women are under attack. Is somehow a completely different mode of thinking than feminist thinking is helping me understand how I've been attacked. That is American exceptionalism. That is American individualism at play. Hold on, I have a phone call. Hello? I was talking about dinner. Let's see. During our where was I? They had grown in their feminist consciousness if they were more aware. Uh In their own lives, they felt it was difficult to speak out and share feminist thinking. Lori posed the question, what would happen to a black feminist woman if she spoke as militantly as a black man? What would happen to a feminist woman if she spoke as militantly as a black man? She answered it herself. People would freak out and start rioting. We all laughed at this. I assured them that I speak up militantly about feminism in a black context, and though there is often protest, there is also growing affirmation. Everyone in the group expressed the fear that a commitment to feminist politics would lead them to be isolated. Carolyn, the student who organized the private reading, selecting as much of the work that was studied, felt she was already more alone, under attack. We see the alienation that black feminists experience by speaking out and ask ourselves, are you strong enough to handle the isolation, the criticism? You know you're going to get it from men and even some women. Overall, the feeling of the group was that studying feminist work, seeing an analysis of gender from a feminist standpoint as a way to understand black experience was necessary for the collective development of black consciousness, for the future of black liberation struggle. Rebecca, a Southerner, felt that her upbringing made it easier to accept notions of gender equality in the workplace, but harder to apply it to personal relationships. Individually, everyone spoke empathetically about critically examining their standpoints and transforming their consciousness as a first stage in the process of feminist politicalization. Sometimes I just get assaulted. Transforming their consciousness as a first stage in the process of feminist politicization. Said this word several times, but yeah, I'm sure you can hear my sinuses getting cramped. Forces. Individually, everyone spoke empathetically about critically examining their standpoints and transforming their consciousness as a first stage in the process of feminist politicization. 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 See how I sound like this after that? It's because I'm being assaulted. Individually, everyone spoke empathetically about critically examining their standpoints because I'm being assaulted. I'm literally being assaulted right now. Individually, everyone spoke empathetically about critically examining their standpoints and transforming their consciousness as a first stage in the process of feminist politicization. I know I can say the fucking word! Individually, everyone spoke empathetically about critically examining their standpoints and transforming their consciousness as a first stage in the process of feminist politicization. I literally, I know how to say the fucking word, but I'm being assaulted. That's not how I speak. Individually, everyone spoke empathetically about critically examining their standpoints and transforming their consciousness as a first stage in the process of feminist politicization. Carolyn added to this comment her conviction that once you learn to look at yourself critically, you look at everything around you with new eyes. I'm sure. Audre Lorde's essay, Eye to Eye, was one of the first reading. This is never going to change. This right here is just, it's never going to change. It's very human. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you for contributing. I feel closer to you. Audre Lorde's essay, Eye to Eye, was one of the first readings on the list. It was the work everyone called to mind in our class when we spoke about how important it is for black women to stand in feminist solidarity with one another. Tensions had emerged in the group between students who felt that individuals would come to class and talk feminism but not act on their beliefs in other settings. There was silence when Tanya reminded the group of the importance of honesty, of facing oneself. That has only gotten worse. Everyone agreed with Carolyn that black women who get it together, who deal with sexism and racism, develop important strategies for survival and resistance that need to be shared within Black communities, especially since, as they put it, the Black woman who gets past all this and discovers herself holds the key to liberation. Yeah. All right. Well, that was cool. I told you, my prediction was correct. I actually didn't have to talk that much during this short chapter, because it hasn't changed. Education reform has not happened. It's only gotten worse. We've only seen more budget cuts, larger class sizes, and as a result, more of a dependence on a quiet, rich home for success in the education system. Big fuck you to anyone who supported that. See you guys.